At a fancy party I helped fund, she loudly introduced me as her chauffeur, ensuring everyone heard. When I quietly confronted her afterward, she rolled her eyes and snapped, "You're lucky I even brought you along." I didn't argue or raise my voice. I simply grabbed my coat and walked out. 2 weeks later, her parents appeared at my doorstep. It's strange how you can share years with someone yet realize you never truly knew them. Perhaps the red flags were always there, and I chose to ignore them. Either way, last month's events flipped my world upside down. Here's what happened. I'm 32, male, and I'd been with Susan, 29, for 2 years. We met through friends at a pub quiz night. She was stunning, charismatic, and had a knack for drawing people in. I was smitten. Susan works in IT at a tech firm in the city center. It's a junior help desk role, modest pay, but she spoke about it as if she ran the company. I'm a general contractor, running my own small company. It's not flashy, but I've built it from the ground up, and it's something I take pride in. Keeps me comfortable and then some. Early in our relationship, everything felt like a dream. We'd spend weekends wandering the city, dining at new spots, or watching obscure films at her favorite little cinema. But in hindsight, there were subtle hints something wasn't right. Offhand remarks about my wardrobe, sly jabs about my pickup truck, and the fact that in 2 years, she never once introduced me to her work colleagues. I brushed it all off because I was head over heels. About a month ago, Susan mentioned her company was throwing a lavish client event at a high-end downtown hotel. She was helping plan it and seemed overwhelmed, obsessing over every detail. "Jessica from IT is bringing her boyfriend," she said casually one evening, eyes glued to her phone. "He's some kind of attorney. Can I come?" I asked lightly, for moral support. There was a brief pause, just long enough for me to notice. "I suppose," she said reluctantly. "It's just corporate types talking shop. You'd probably be bored." Since she'd been stressed about finances lately, her rent had spiked, and she'd hinted at needing to relocate. I offered to cover some party costs. I ended up paying for her new dress for $150, a gift basket for her boss, $200, and various party supplies. It wasn't a massive sum, but it wasn't trivial either. On the night of the event, I went all out. I wore my sharpest suit, reserved for big client meetings, and got a fresh haircut. The whole 9 yards. Susan barely noticed when I picked her up in my truck, too distracted, only asking if I'd brought the gift basket. As we arrived at the hotel, I sensed her growing tense. Walking through the lobby toward the banquet hall, she started pulling ahead, putting space between us. "Maybe hang out at the bar first," she suggested abruptly. "I need to handle some things." "I'll come with you," I offered. "I can carry something if you need." She looked irritated but didn't protest. The ballroom was impressive, open bar, gourmet hors d'oeuvres, ambient lighting. Susan immediately spotted some coworkers and headed over, with me following behind. "Susan, this place looks incredible," said a woman in a chic black dress. "Who's this?" There was a moment's hesitation, too long to miss. I started to introduce myself, but Susan cut in. "This is Alex, my driver tonight." Her words echoed in the air. The woman looked puzzled, eyeing my suit, clearly not convinced. "Your driver?" she asked, brow raised. "Yeah." Susan laughed too loudly. "He was kind enough to give me a ride. But he's leaving now, right, Alex?" Felt like a slap. 2 years together and I was her driver? I gently pulled her aside, keeping my voice low. "What was that about?" She rolled her eyes, glancing to see if anyone was watching. "These are important people, Alex. My job's on the line. Just wait in the car or something." "I helped pay for this event," I reminded her. "I bought your dress." That's when she looked at me with pure disdain. "You should be thankful I even let you come." In that instant, everything clicked. Those little comments, those slights, they weren't quirks. This was her true self. I didn't argue or shout. I just nodded, said, "You're right," and left. I grabbed my coat from the check room and drove home in silence. By the time I got home, my phone was flooded with missed calls and texts from Susan. "Where are you? You left me stranded. Stop being so dramatic. You're embarrassing me." I ignored them all, turned off my phone, and cracked open a beer. I felt oddly at peace, like I'd finally snapped out of a trance. The next morning, Susan was at my door, eyes red like she'd been crying, though her makeup was flawless as always. "What was that last night?" she demanded. "You just abandoned me. I had to take an Uber." "You called me your driver," I said calmly, leaning against the doorframe, not inviting her in. It was a joke, she snapped. You're so touchy. Those people matter to my career. I didn't want them thinking I was with, a contractor? Finished. She looked slightly guilty but pressed on. That's not what I meant. It's just office politics. Then came the tears, her specialty. She apologized profusely, blaming stress and her boss's expectations. She promised to make it up to me, even suggested a romantic weekend away. I love you, she said, touching my cheek. You know that, right? Last night was a mistake. I played along, letting her think I bought it. I invited her in, made her coffee, and listened to her excuses. She left convinced we were fine. A few days later, things seemed normal on the surface. Susan was overly affectionate, sending heart emojis and talking about our future. Then, a week after the party, she called, bubbling with excitement. Babe, my birthday's in a couple of weeks. I'm thinking of hosting a dinner for some work friends at that new place, Antonelli's. Sounds great, I said neutrally. Yeah, but I'm a bit strapped for cash after the party, she admitted. Could you help out? You need me to cover it? I asked, already knowing her answer. Would you? It'd mean the world. Just my coworkers, a networking thing. She didn't invite me to join. How much? I asked. About $1,200 for the private room. They need a card to reserve it. I'll put my card down, I said. Just let me know when you need it. You're amazing, she squealed. I'll swing by tomorrow to grab it. The next day, she came over, and I handed her a credit card. She took it with a grin, not noticing it wasn't my usual one. So, what time should I show up? I asked casually. Her smile wavered. Oh, it's just work people. Boring stuff. You wouldn't like it. Got it, I said, nodding. No worries. Thanks for being so understanding, she said, pecking my cheek before leaving. On the day of her dinner, I called my bank and reported the card I'd given her as lost. They canceled it and issued a new one. Then I put on my best suit, sharper than the one from the party, and headed to Antonelli's. Instead of entering the main dining area, I sat at the bar, partially hidden by a decorative screen but with a clear view of the private room. They arrived at 7:30. Susan, radiant in a new dress I hadn't seen, surrounded by her coworkers. I recognized the woman from the party who'd heard her call me her driver. There was also a man I didn't know, his hand resting on Susan's lower back. She didn't pull away. She seemed to welcome it. I ordered a whiskey and watched. They were all smiles, snapping photos, toasting. Susan was in her element, commanding the room, a stark contrast to the girlfriend who often griped about her low-level IT job. At 9:45, the server brought the bill. Susan, with a confident smile, handed over my card, brushing off her colleagues' offers to chip in. It's my birthday, my treat, I imagined her saying. The server returned moments later, whispering to Susan. Her expression shifted from confusion to panic. She grabbed her phone, likely checking her bank app, then started texting me frantically. My phone buzzed. Alex, your card's not working. It's declining. Call me. I stayed silent. Another text. This is serious. I look like a fool. The bill's over $1,200. I sipped my whiskey and watched. Susan was now flustered, her face red as she made excuses to her group. She tried other cards from her wallet, likely maxed out, as she'd complained about debt recently. After 5 increasingly desperate texts, I replied, Look behind you. She read it, her head jerking up. She scanned the room until her eyes locked on me at the bar. Her face paled. I stood, paid for my drink, and walked toward the private room, pulling an envelope from my pocket. The table fell silent as I entered. Susan looked horrified. A few people recognized me, including the woman from the party. Isn't this your driver? Someone asked. I smiled calmly. Actually, I was her boyfriend of 2 years. I pulled out photos from the envelope, snapshots of us on trips, at events, holidays, and laid them on the table. I also paid for her dress at your client event, her boss's gift basket, and got called her driver for it. The silence was heavy. The man who'd been touching Susan shifted away from her. Her boss, a sharp-eyed woman at the table's head, stared at the photos. Alex, can we talk outside? Susan whispered, her face scarlet. No need, I said politely. Just here to wish you a happy birthday and let you know the card was canceled. Reported lost yesterday. You did what? She shrieked, losing all composure. I straightened my jacket. And to answer your question from 2 weeks ago, no, I'm not grateful you let me in. But I am grateful for the clarity. I turned to the table. Enjoy your evening. The bill's on you, Susan. She lunged, grabbing my arm. You can't leave me with this. I looked at her hand, then her face. Get lost, I said softly and walked out. Behind me, chaos erupted. Susan shouting my name, murmurs of confusion, someone suggesting they split the bill. I didn't look back. The next day, Susan blew up my phone with calls and texts, swinging between apologies and threats. I blocked her. She showed up at my house twice. I didn't open the door. She left voicemails from friends' phones. I deleted them unheard. A week later, a coworker of hers messaged me on LinkedIn. Susan's boss had launched an HR investigation after learning she'd been exaggerating her role and taking credit for others' work. The man at the dinner? A senior developer she'd been secretly seeing who cut ties after the fiasco. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang. It was an older couple, clearly uncomfortable. The resemblance was obvious, Susan's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, I said, surprised. I'd met them once briefly when they visited town. Can we come in? Her father asked. I let them in, curious. We sat in my living room, the air heavy. We're here to apologize, her mother said. For Susan's actions. For everything. Her father nodded. She's struggling. Lost her job, had to move back with us. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and part of me was. I didn't want her to suffer, just to be out of my life. Don't apologize, her mother said firmly. She brought this on herself. We've always known she could be materialistic. We enabled it too much when she was young. Her father looked remorseful. We pushed her to find someone successful, told her to use her charm. But we didn't expect this. It made sense. I recalled her father once joking about her catching a big fish when he learned about my business. She told us what happened, he continued. Tried to spin it like you humiliated her. But we got the real story eventually. Her mother handed me an envelope. She's too embarrassed to face you, but we wanted you to have this. Inside was a check for $925 and a note. For the dress, the basket, and everything else. I'm sorry. I stared at it. It was never about the money. We made her take accountability, her father said. She sold some of her designer things to pay you back. It's a start. Thank you, I said, tucking the check back in. I appreciate you coming. They said Susan had gone offline, deleting her social media to work on herself. As for me, business is thriving. I've started dating again carefully. Last week, I had coffee with a kindergarten teacher who asked genuine questions about my work and seemed to care about my answers. Sometimes, I think back to that moment in the ballroom when Susan called me her driver. Stung, but I'm thankful for it now. Some people reveal their true selves in grand gestures. Others in small, careless cruelties. Either way, when they show you who they are, trust them the first time. I just wish I had sooner. Update. For those curious about the credit card, no, she couldn't have faced fraud charges. I gave her the card willingly and only reported it lost, not stolen, so the bank just canceled it. And yes, leaving her with the bill was petty, but after being treated like a walking wallet for 2 years, I felt I'd earned a bit of pettiness.